and it's a monster. I mean, when you want to really fly around and play some lead on a 12 string, you can't just pick it up and do it. You have to work out for a while.
Wow. Yeah.
It's really like an undertaking, a physical undertaking to really sound the notes the way you want to hear them sounded and hit and attack right on it. With those double strings, you never know what you're going to get. So you kind of have to readjust your hands and strengthen your hands to really get good on it.
Wow.
I'm playing banjo on it, and bass, drums, guitar, harmonica, keyboards, banjo, 12-string guitar, and 11 new songs. I just wrote them and recorded them, and Record Store Day invited me to be part of this year, and I was thrilled because I had the songs written, but then all of a sudden I had a deadline. Like, wow, I got to record and get this to the pressing plant, and and everything. It was really great to have a looming deadline.
Can you talk about your songwriting process?
My songwriting process is kind of subconscious in a way. Like, I really don't write using an instrument. The songs come to me when I'm either walking or driving.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and they come music and lyrics. I work backwards from a title almost all the time. I'll get a great title, and I'm like, oh my God, there needs to be a song called this, whatever it is, right? Like, I have a new song called Nobody Likes to Show Off. Like, I heard somebody say that. Nobody likes to show off. I was like, oh my God, why isn't there a song called that? And then I work backwards, like I'm serving, and it just comes in my head. I'll be driving, because I drive back and forth to the desert a lot, which is a 3-hour drive. I have a house in the Mojave Desert.
Oh wow!
And I have an apartment in Santa Monica, and I drive back and forth at night, and song ideas just come to me like crazy.
Wow!
And I try to memorize them, so when I finally pull over, I can sing them into my phone or something.
Do you hear the chords in your head too, or is it like?
Well, I hear the melody, and I hear the melody, and I hear the rhythm. And it isn't until I pick up a guitar do I figure out what key I was in when it was in my head. And then I just play the chords that would support that melody. So it's melody first. I don't think I've written instrumentals sitting down at a guitar, with a guitar, or sitting down at a piano, but I've never written lyrical songs that way, ever. They always come to me in my head, and then I kind of transcribe them to an instrument after they're written.
Wow, that's incredible. I've interviewed a lot of people and never heard something this cool before. That's awesome.
Oh, right. Yeah, it feels normal to me. I assumed like Brian Wilson, I could picture him hearing the whole thing in his head before he even sits down at the piano. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong.
Can you talk about your radio show, The Many Moods of Ben Vaughn?
Sure. When I was a kid, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a DJ or the guy who made the records that the DJs played. And when I was in high school, my voice dropped, and my friends told me, wow, you have an FM DJ voice, So that kept that fantasy going, that I could be an FM DJ or a musician. And I knew I had to be involved in music. I knew that much, either as a songwriter or a DJ or a performer or a singer or something. But the songwriting bug caught me really big, and that got me a record deal and started a career, a recording career. And then I left the record business for 10 years and did music for TV shows. And when I got out of that, and I stepped away from that, I realized it was time to pursue the radio fantasy. And a station in Memphis, WEVL in Memphis, they asked me, I was visiting and they asked me to come in and guest DJ, and when I did, it got a great reaction. So they offered me a weekly show, Fridays during drive time, that I could record in LA and send to them. And I started doing that, and that put me on the air, and that was probably 15 years ago at this point.
Wow. Is it all like analog, like records and like?
Oh yeah, and even 8-track tapes even.
Wow. That's amazing.
I make a big deal out of it when I play an 8-track tape. I make sure people hear me putting it in like ka-chunk, you know.
I saw something on YouTube of your like there's you like no one was there, but it was like like a desert background or something with like your record player and like a beer and stuff. It looked awesome. Like you were doing it. Nice. What is the trick when writing for TV and film? I'm assuming that's probably you approach that differently than your regular songwriting, or maybe you don't. I don't know.
Well, when I was a kid and I would be watching TV, I would pick out the instruments that were in the underscore. Like if I was watching, Dragnet or The Fugitive or Man from U.N.C.L.E., I kind of noticed like, so when they're in a dark alley, there's bongos. That's an interesting, or there's a muted trumpet when this shows up. I've always been able to pick out instruments on records. Like I can listen, and I'm sure you're the same way, where you listen to a record and go, Hammond organ, tambourine, two guitars, bass, drums, and you can hear where their reverb is, how they did their stereo imaging and everything. And I've always been that way since I was a kid. So I would pick out the instruments all the time when I was watching TV, or I'd be at the movies. And I always thought that it would be really cool to score films. And when Pulp Fiction came out, was right around that time, I decided that's what I wanted to do. I was entertaining the idea of moving to LA, where you have to be to get the work, because you need to be available to go to the meetings in person and to the the spotting sessions and the mixing sessions and all that. So I was contemplating moving out here, and I came out for a visit, and a woman who was involved with Pulp Fiction took me to a screening. The film wasn't out yet. She took me to a private screening. And as soon as that Dick Dale number came on in the beginning, I was like, I can get work. Because I've been playing surf guitar since I was a kid, and it was not valued in the marketplace. it was almost like speaking Latin. Not just writing it, but actually speaking Latin. There's you can't get a job, right? And so I was dedicated to this anachronistic art form just because I loved it, for no other reason. I just loved it. Reverb and tremolo picking and using a vibrato bar, and when Pulp Fiction came out, an agent in Hollywood, she told me, if I moved to LA, she could get me work. And I wanted a reason to write music every day, because the record industry doesn't give you that. You come up with 12 songs, you go into the studio, you record them, then you tour for like close to a year promoting those 12 songs, and then you go back in and record another 12. So that's 12 songs a year, or 12 songs every year and a half, and that's it.
Right.
And I love the writing process, and that wasn't enough for me. I wanted to write music every day, and I also wanted to be challenged to have to write in genres I've never written in before. And I figured Hollywood would be the place. And when I came out to do films, and I figured they would be weird independent films that wouldn't make much money, but I just wanted to be creatively active. That was always the engine driving everything. Is like, I want to be learning something new, and I want to be useful, and I want to be working. And then TV, I was discovered by some TV people, and the next thing you know, I had Third Rock from the Sun, which became a huge hit, and then that 70s show, and then I was hot for quite a while there.
Yeah. Do you still do any TV or film at
No, I stepped away when that '70s show went off the air. That I took that as a sign that, I did it for 11 years.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
near the end of those 11 years, I didn't feel like I was learning anything. I was repeating a lot of what I had learned. And I felt it was a good time to step away and get back into other less mainstream talents that I had that were kind of on hold because I was so busy with the demand of delivery.
Yeah, gotcha.
Television is incredibly intense. Because you're on the air Tuesday night. You have. I mean, this isn't like you can't postpone it. Like you can postpone the release of a record or postpone a film.
Right.
You can't postpone a weekly TV show. You're on the air, and so whatever you lay down and married to picture is going to be on the air the next Tuesday or Thursday, whether you like what you did or not. So you have to really like what you did, which means your first choice has to be the right choice because it's really the only choice you have time for.
Wow.
And that really was exciting for me. I responded well to it. I really liked that idea. It took it pretty much took all of my neurosis away as a writer. Because if I got neurotic, I would be fired. I mean, there was no room for neurosis.
Oh, wow. Do you have a favorite record of yours, like one of your own that you've done, and why? And do you also have a favorite one you produced for someone else, or is that just a bad question?
Well, I don't have a favorite of mine. Like my new one is my favorite, but that's what every artist will tell you. So that's kind of like, that's a hard question to answer,
Gotcha.
But as a producer, the Arthur Alexander record that I did for Elektra, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I listened to some of it.
Yeah, that was, for me, not only am I proud of the product, I just have so many great memories of how that record was made, and getting to know Arthur, who was a songwriting hero of mine. Such a subtle, graceful songwriter and singer. And he was a huge guy, like a kind of a threatening looking guy.
Really?
And then when he opened his mouth, it was like, oh, Arthur.
Yeah.
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I felt that guy's pain. He was such a gentle soul. And his songs were just so, working with him, I really learned a lot because I got a chance to work with Dan Penn and Spooner Oldham. And the band that was the American Studios band in Memphis that backed up, Elvis and Neil Diamond and B.J. Thomas and the Box Tops and all that. So for me, it was a dream all around. And working with Reggie Young on guitar, he's the guitar player and all that stuff, and working with him on guitar and becoming friends with him was a beautiful experience. So that's definitely, for me, the highlight of my producing career. I don't co-write much because I'm a little weird, or so I'm told. Bill Lloyd was probably my most successful co-writing partner. I met him in the 80s when he had a #1 country hit. Foster and Lloyd had a #1 country hit.
Wow.
Called Crazy Over You, I think it was called. And I was on tour, and I met him in Austin. He came to my gig and introduced himself, and then somebody said, that guy you're talking to? He has the #1 country record right now. And I was like, no, he doesn't. Nobody in this room has the #1 country record. Come on. He goes, no, actually, that guy does. And he's actually more of a power pop guy, really into Big Star and the Beatles and everything, and really loved my stuff and was paying attention to, alternative music. He just happened to be in a mainstream country act at the time with a #1 record, but that wasn't his natural thing. And he invited me to co-write with him. I also co-wrote with Rodney Crowell. And that was a real learning experience because Rodney is, he's one of those guys where He's so natural and so flowing, but he will stop and say, okay, the word "and" or the word "but." Do we need that in there? Or can we just scoop that out and have less words? He really had it was an education for me on how every single word matters. And, he's an incredible songwriter. And I've co-written a little bit else here and there, but not much. I don't do it much. Because you would have to be in the car with me in order for it to happen.
Yeah. That's funny. And who's recorded your songs?
Yeah, Deer Tick is a popular, I guess, alternative rock or indie rock band. They're pretty big. They recorded a version of "Too Sensitive for This World," a song that I wrote back in the '80s, and they were doing it on stage for a couple of years, and then they recorded it, and I just performed with them. They came through right before Omicron, that little window we had there when everything was almost okay.
Right.
They played in L.A. At the Fonda Theater, and they asked me to come up and do a couple songs with them, and we did that song. And it was really great to play in front of a large crowd of people who never heard of me. That was really, really satisfying, and it went over really well. Marshall Crenshaw recorded "I'm Sorry, But So Is Brenda Lee" back in '85, and that put me on the map, actually.
Nice.
He was a major label recording artist, and I think I might have been the first, obscure songwriter he ever covered.
Did you pitch that to him, or he just kind of found you? Or?
What happened is he came to see me play. He happened to be at a gig where I was the opening act, and he recognized something in me that he responded to, and approached me about co-writing, which we tried to do, and that didn't work out. For some reason, we got together a couple times, but the ideas just didn't seem. They kept bouncing off each other instead of landing together. And finally, he said, "You know what? I've decided. I'm just going to cover one of your songs. How's that sound?" And I was like, "Wow." I like it. I like that idea.
Yeah.
And he did, and that got me a lot of attention.
Nice. That's great.
I quit my job as a landscaper when that first check came in. The way I look at songwriting is every time you write a song, release it, get it out there, because every song is like a lottery ticket, and it gets thrown in that bowl, and you never know who's going to reach their hand in there and pull it out.
Right.
And go, wow, this is the one, and then your fortunes change.
Yeah.
It wasn't a hit song, but it was enough for me to actually have a career. Like I suddenly was taken seriously. People wanted to know who this guy was because Marshall recorded that song.
I have to ask this question. I'm a big Ken Queter fan. He says hi, by the way. He said something about he has like 6 tasers now or something. He said he made some sort of taser joke. He said you'd get it. Maybe I'm stating the joke wrong.
He scared. Last time I saw him, he scared me because he was showing off his taser and it got a little too close to me. I was like, Kenny.
Yeah.
Seriously, Kenny, calm down.
It's like Hunter Thompson stuff.
Yeah, he is. Wow.
So, Mike, the question is, how did you meet him, Ken Queter, and what records of his did you produce? And he also said you saved his life. He said that in text. I text back and forth with him a bunch.
Yeah, he says that to people, and I don't know what he's referring to. I don't know how I could have saved his life, but I first encountered Ken Queter back in the 70s with the Secret Kids. I was at Glassboro State College, which is now Rowan, which is kind of like in the middle of the woods in New Jersey, and they had a concert series down there. A friend of mine went to that school, and he booked everybody. So I would drive down there and see I saw Jonathan Richman in the 70s, and a whole mess of other people, Tom Waits. And one night it was Ken Queter and the Secret Kids, and I went because I had been reading about them. David Frick was a big fan, and he was a local writer at the time in Philly, and he was always writing about Ken Queter and the Secret Kids. So I went, and so the band comes out on stage with no singer, and they're playing, and all of a sudden, two people are pushing a refrigerator on wheels, or like a, some kind of freezer on wheels.
Uh-huh.
And they push it out to the middle of the stage, and then the door flies open, and Queeter comes out wearing a white jumpsuit and holding a cane. And I think he's wearing a hat. It was like, Clockwork Orange.
Uh-huh.
And then the band's playing, and he goes up to the microphone, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to hear this guy sing. And then he screamed for like a minute, like one scream.
Uh-huh.
Just, ah! And it went on and on and on. And I was like, this is my favorite performer. This is the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
Uh-huh.
And I've never recovered.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I found out later he had a folk side to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's when we worked together. We did a cassette-only release, which was kind of humorous,
mm-hmm.
if you think about it, called Kitchen Folk.
Mm-hmm.
Because we got together in his kitchen, and he would play me all these songs, and I would listen to them and make notes, and he wanted me to produce them, and I was like really, really into it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I wanted to do it the old school way, where you sit around and you listen to the guy's material. I wanted to be John Hammond with Bob Dylan sitting in my kitchen,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I listened to a whole lot of songs, and then we chose a bunch, and we went into a studio in Camden, and the whole thing is acoustic.
Uh-huh.
And then we did some electric stuff too, which ended up on the it was like a double LP retrospective thing, and then I think there's a Man Overboard album.
Mm-hmm.
The way he released it confused my ability to tell you exactly what I produced by him is a little hard, because he released it in a kind of a convoluted way.
Gotcha.
But he's a genius. He's a genius. I mean, that guy, his songwriting. Oh my God.
Yeah, he is incredible.
And the permission he gives himself to be Ken Queeter is really impressive.
Yeah.
And he was an influence on me too, because giving myself permission to be Ben Vaughn didn't exactly come naturally. I came from a very humble background where my parents, their idea was you never call attention to yourself. And then I would see Ken Queeter. I'm like, I don't know, man. I think it's pretty cool to embrace who you are and put it out there. And Kenny was one of the first guys I was able to witness up close doing that. Yeah, great guy, and unbelievable artist. I'm so happy that he's still creating and still performing. It's great.
Yeah, I don't know how he does that. That's unbelievable. Have you heard his sandwich trick, where he'll go into the when he's trying to get a gig, if he gets a sandwich and he brings an empty guitar case, or and then just says he did some high-end gig overseas or something and is just getting back. It's his way to get, because he plays all the bars and stuff, but he calls it the sandwich trick because he goes in and that's how he gets gigs.
I don't doubt it.
Oh man, that's funny. Okay, so last two questions for you. Who would you like to work with that you have yet to?
Well, I guess, I would have said Van Morrison pre-COVID. Well, what my dream was to produce Van Morrison but get fired midway through. Because that's what would happen, right? There's no way he would give me as much control as I would want. So I wanted to be able to tell the story of how Van Morrison fired me.
Oh, yeah, that's a good story. That would be.
Obviously, Dylan. The one person I would love to work with, but I don't know if she's still singing, is Jackie DeShannon. I'm a huge Jackie DeShannon fan. And I think it would really be great to, work with her. And most of the blues guys that I would have wanted to work with are no longer here. So that my list used to be very long.
Do you like Ry Cooder? I see, seems kind of pretty similar to you. You got highly creative and multiple styles.
Yeah, I do. I like Ry a lot. He probably an influence on like how varied I would like my career to be. You know, like his score for Paris, Texas.
Yeah.
That definitely opened a door. Like I remember seeing that movie and going, "Oh man, so guys like us can maybe do this too." You know, guitar players.
Nice. Yeah.
You know,
I never thought
because there weren't that many scores like that before Paris, Texas.
Is there anything else that you want to accomplish or do, or future goals or no goals?
Wow. I would like to stay on stage and be vital and stay on stage a long time. And when all this COVID madness is over, I want to hit the road and be out there. Because I stayed off the road. I used to tour constantly, and then when I quit touring and came out to Hollywood to do music, I never got back into it much. I'm still popular in Europe, so I go over there and I play like maybe 10 shows, and that's about it. But I really want to be on stage as much as possible because I really love communicating with people. Watching the reaction and then me reacting to their reaction is like a thing that's how I got started when I was a kid. I went into a bookstore in Philly in the 70s. I think it was a bookstore. It might have been a junk store with books. I can't remember. And I went in and he was working behind the counter, or he was just there. I don't know. And I think he was doing some day drinking, maybe.
Sounds like him.
I found a Jesse Graves record there in the stack, and I brought it up to the counter, and I go, "How much for this?" And he gave me this really weird look, and said, "Why, do you like him?" I go, "I haven't heard him yet, but I'm curious." And he goes, "Oh, he's really good." And I said, "Really?" And then I'm looking at the cover, and I'm looking at him, and I'm going, "Hey, hold on now." And he ended up giving me the record. And also a book on Gestalt therapy, which he told me I needed.
Oh, really?
So that's my Jesse Graves story.
That's
and
hilarious.
I went home and listened to the record and fell in love with it. That is one of the most lo-fi.
Yeah.
I mean, that really is like, that's really a lo-fi recording.
Yeah.
But I loved it. And I never found him again. I don't know, maybe he left Philly around that time. Yeah, he was a mystery to me because I had heard the name. I had seen it in ads, at the Main Point or Grendel's Lair or wherever he would have been playing at the time. And I always loved that name, Jesse Graves.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's just a perfect name.
Yeah.
And so he was already legendary in my mind. And of course, my only run-in with him was as mysterious and weird as I had hoped.
Yeah.
And then he disappeared. It was like the perfect story for,